Welcome to the AARC Education Specialty Section Spring 2015 meeting. My name is Shauna Strickland. I'm the Associate Executive Director of Education at the AARC and the Education Section Staff Liaison. I am very pleased to welcome Dr. Ellen Becker, AARC Education Specialty Section Chair. Ellen, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Shauna. And I'd like to thank Joe Sorbello for last year leading our first spring webinar. And I'd like to thank our colleagues in the AARC office, specifically Shauna and Reagan, for facilitating the logistics of bringing us together. Also, a big thank you to the entire Ed Section membership for providing me with the content for today's webinar. As I move through the notes that I have up on the screen, these are the topics that you submitted for discussion. And so I did a little homework, tried to provide you with some feedback, and periodically what I'm going to do is ask some questions of the group, and Shauna's going to help me out by monitoring the chat room for me. So I'm hoping for this meeting, although we cannot be together in person, I'm hoping for this meeting to be interactive. So let's move forward. Some of you may be cleaning out some old files, making space for new equipment. Please make sure that you consider either taking pictures of the equipment, finding things that have been around for at least 10 years, because these are things we can submit to the virtual museum. If you have an image to submit, please send it on to Trudy Watson or Gail Carr. I've listed their emails here in this presentation, and Shauna mentioned that the webinar will be recorded and we will be able to access it afterwards. I'm going to submit the PowerPoint files because this way you'll have clickable links and hopefully find it easier to access the information I share. The education bulletins have been around for a number of years, and more recently with the ability to look at analytics, they have not been as widely read. And if we look at what were the analytics for 2014, we can see that only 10% of section members downloaded the bulletins, and the average viewing time for an individual bulletin was only 45 seconds. So with that in mind, my thought was if we took some of our content and broke it into smaller bits and put it in a more interactive format, that it might actually serve the section better. And with that in mind and good timing, I'd like to thank Gail Carr for initiating this idea of a no obligation book club. And so the idea behind the no obligation book club is that if you wanted to get the book and read it, fine. If you did not want to read it, you would still be able to take advantage of watching and participating in an interactive discussion. So with the book club, and that has actually started this week, and I saw some nice discussion taking place online, that we will still retain that professional service opportunity that writing something for the Ed Section bulletin provided us with. People can choose to be a chapter leader. The content will be evidence-based, and I think will give greater visibility to the information that we share. So the book that's being discussed and the discussion that began this week is called Teaching with the Brain in Mind, What Neuroscience Can and Cannot Be Done. Or tell us about what students learn and what they don't. So after our first discussion is complete, what I'll be doing is I'll be soliciting feedback from the membership or whether or not to reinstate the section bulletin, or if some of these other more interactive formats are meeting our section needs. So please feel free to provide some feedback on that. A big thank you to our inaugural chapter leaders, Shauna Strickland, who's moderating the session with me today, Karen Schell, Joe Sorbello, Sharon Armstead, Helen Sorensen, Kelly Crawford-Jones, Curtis Allmiller, Carrie George, Taba Dragonberry, and Julie Clinch. So thank you for volunteering, and I look forward to others who may emerge from the section and be interested in participating. Our thought at the outset was to perhaps do one book in spring and one book in fall, so please feel free to chime in as we go forward and let me know how this is working for you. Here's a partial list of President Salvatore's 2015 AARC goals, and I pulled out some of the goals that are specific to the education section because I'm going to refer back to them because many of them tie into topics that you submitted for the webinar. So some goals that were presented at the business meeting back in December were to advance the concepts from the respiratory therapist for 2015 and beyond, and that's predominantly looking at moving in a direction where a bachelor's degree is entry level. We want to promote and advocate for appropriate patient and caregiver access to RTs in all care settings. So again, we're going to think of not just more traditional hospital settings, but also more home care, outpatient clinic-based care where we have more opportunities. We want to promote high-quality education for the development and enhancement of the skill base. We want to make sure we don't forget today's practitioners and focus solely on entry-level practitioners. There's also a goal to look at developing programs accrediting and credentialing an advanced practice respiratory therapist. And lastly, we want to, as part of the goals, develop the next generation of respiratory therapy researchers. So with that as a backdrop, let me move into some of the specific requests that came in through an earlier poll when this meeting was announced. There were several individuals who were interested in learning more about inter-rater agreement for psychomotor skills. And this is a topic that really fits nicely for both those of you who are practicing in hospital-based settings as well as those who may be working in academic settings. So inter-rater reliability or inter-rater agreement. A good resource is to look at the COARC website, and I have the hyperlink there. And you're going to see several of these links presented throughout this webinar. And just want to remind everybody, we do have a lot of great resources to make sure you check both the AARC website and the COARC website. So I just want to give you some hints as to where you can find them. So I included the link. The other thing that I'm really excited about is we're going to have a presentation on inter-rater reliability at the summer forum, and that's going to be held on Monday afternoon, the first full day of the summer forum, and it's going to address the COARC site visitor's perspective of looking at inter-rater reliability. So those are a few resources that we have readily available. Another topic that crosses over between hospital and academic educators is preceptor training. I can think back to my earliest education role when I was an education coordinator in a hospital. At that time, which was multiple decades ago, in fact last century, we didn't really have a specific training for preceptors, and fortunately we have some resources. The ARC Clinical Preceptor Training Program is something that's available, and there's also a webinar that's stored on the COARC website called Engaging in Clinical Sites and Preceptors. So those are two resources that I'm sharing, but I'm kind of curious to the group. Do you have any suggestions that you know of and would wish to share regarding clinical preceptor preparation? Have you had success recently engaging a site that was previously less engaged? So if you have a personal experience, certainly let us know what works, and we can, through the transcript of this webinar, share it with our colleagues. One of the comments on the survey asked about looking how we could work together and evaluate respiratory care clinical practices from several programs and locations across the country. So this individual was specifically interested in discussing how practices might differ in the different regions of the country. And in terms of moving forward on this, I think what we really would need is suggestions of how to implement this. So in other words, would it be a good goal to identify which topics for clinical practice, because all of clinical practice is fairly broad. If there was an interest in pulling this together, what topics would you be interested in looking at? I think it would be helpful to have, what is the evidence base for each of the practices? What are some of the gaps in the evidence? And again, identifying gaps in evidence is a terrific way for future research projects so that we can work to fill those gaps. So I'm just going to leave this open at the moment and have those who are on the call, or if you're listening to this at a later point in time, share any ideas that you have to develop this topic further if you feel it is important. Another topic that was brought forward was e-cheating. So I love the idea that we have technology. I'm a big fan of technology, but technology not only brings with it opportunities, but also some challenges. And again, this is another topic that will cross over from our hospital-based and academic settings. And the hospital side of staff have opportunities to complete things electronically, and so we need to know, is really the person completing the activity the person who we think is and who is getting credit for it. Is anybody dealing with e-cheating out there? And maybe this is a good time to go to our interactive tools. So above my name and Shauna's name, in the moderator section, there are 4 little boxes. The first is a smiley face. The second looks like a little timer. The third is the hand signal, and then there's the little check box, the 4th box. Is this something, a topic that you would like to see more information on? If you just don't mind responding either a yes or a no. So let's just take a little time out. Is e-cheating something that you would like the education section to address? If we were to address it, we could look at, what peer-reviewed literature is on the topic, identify a case that somebody worked through, figure out what worked, what didn't work, policies. And Shauna, I'm going to leave it to you. It looks like I'm seeing a number of check marks. We've got a couple of people interacting here. Okay, so thank you for sharing. So it looks like of half the people who responded, half of them feel e-cheating is something that we might want to give further attention to. Okay, thanks for your feedback. Here's a topic that generated lots of spirited discussions after the Therapist Multiple Choice exam was released in January, and many of our students started taking it. There was lots of discussion, and in terms of how was the cut score developed, is the cut score where it ought to be for the CRT, for the RRT, and again, thanks for sharing your concerns. One of the things that was good timing is at the time this discussion was taking place, the program committee for the AARC was busy working on both lectures for the summer forum and targeting content for next year's, or actually now this year's, International Congress. And so we took that concern and put it forward, and I'm thrilled to see that we're going to have a couple presentations happening at the summer forum this July. As part of a pre-conference, we're actually going to have an opportunity to develop cut scores for exams. So Dr. Rob, and I'm sorry, Rob, I just blanked your name. You will be walking us through how to, from the MBRC, to walk us through and show us how to create a cut score. So this way we will be able to evaluate for our own exams and our program outcomes an appropriate score for evaluating our own students. So that's going to take place on Sunday, and the pre-conference will begin midday on Sunday. So if you're booking your plans for Phoenix, you want to attend this session, which looks to be a phenomenal session, please plan to arrive midday. A second presentation that's going to cover the studies that were used to validate the cut scores on the therapist multiple choice exam, that data will be presented Wednesday, the last half day of the summer forum. So again, two excellent topics to address concerns that many people had. Plan on booking your flight and reserving time for the summer forum, and those are the dates and times to make sure that that we can that you can get the answers to the questions that you have. Shauna, I think I should take a pause now. Are there any comments from the group that you would like to share with me?
Not yet. Nobody has typed anything yet. So if you have some thoughts, type it in. But so far, I think everyone's just absorbing and thinking about what you've said so far.
Okay, great. Then we'll move on. Another person asked questions about how we're going to make the shift from associate degree to baccalaureate degree, and was wondering how associate degree programs can stay involved and be included as partners in the strategies. So far, the AARC has plans to develop a toolkit, and some of the ideas for the toolkit would be things like curricular plans, STEPS programs who have already made the conversion from AS to BS. What steps have they taken? Who are key personnel that they included at important steps in the process? Who was all involved? For example, how they interacted with COARC, their individual state boards of education. Here, again, I'd like to offer people an opportunity to chime in. What are other things you might want to see in a toolkit? Has anyone on the call navigated this change, and would you like to contribute? So if anyone wants to chime in on those topics, feel free to do so, and then Shauna can chime in and keep me posted and bring all of us up to date on what has been shared. Another theme related to associate degree programs is what's happening with associate degree programs that are being squeezed to reduce credit hours. So many associate degree programs are asked to limit their credit hours to 60 credits. So we need to figure out what are some strategies to accomplish this mandate. And again, on the call, is there anyone out there who's successfully negotiated waivers? So in other words, if you're going to go over your 60 degree credit allotment, you need to apply to states for waivers. And so I'd be very interested in knowing who has applied for a waiver and if you've been successful. Another thought is to consider leveraging your argument with the state by working with other respiratory care programs in your state. So, for example, even though you might need to individually work on a waiver, is there a way that you can band together with other programs in your state to try to make a more compelling argument? So if this is an issue for you, or if you need further help, this is an opportunity to chime in. If this is something you have some strategies for, you know some things out there that have worked for others, please share that so that we can all benefit. Another member had suggested that we address faculty development, and more specifically, what are the strategies that are out there to create graduate programs that prepare faculty to teach in respiratory care programs? And this particular individual said, I mean, really good programs that have allied health education in mind and not a generalist education. And so with that, I think about faculty preparation as just requiring a really good curricular foundation as well as opportunities to put that into practice, which is basically getting some teaching experience. And there are a number of education programs that are out there that prepare individuals to, learn about curriculum, educational philosophy, education technology, evaluation, assessment, leadership. So here again, has anyone perhaps recently completed a program that they felt prepared them well for teaching? So here's an opportunity to share the names of existing programs that have worked well, and I'll throw a question out for the entire group again, so you can vote with the little checkbox above the fourth checkbox to the right above our moderator names. Do you think we need a specific education program for allied health education? So in terms of graduate education programs, can it just be a generic education graduate program, or do you think it needs to be specific for allied health? So let's just allow a moment for people to vote whether it needs to be specific for allied health or not. While I see a few votes coming in, why don't I move on and share an idea. At the upcoming summer forum, and also the International Congress would be another avenue. I think those are great opportunities for mentorship, which also contributes to faculty development. This coming summer will mark a 21st anniversary for me of attending a summer forum. Not that I attended every one, but I attended many over the years. And here's a place where we can get good guidance from either people who are at the same point in their career as we are and form a nice support group, and I think my colleagues out there who have supported me along the way, as well as reach across to others. When I started in formal academic settings after moving out of the hospital clinical setting, there was a lot I didn't know, and it was great to bump into people who I really looked up to, people who had been into the profession for a while and who were really helpful in guiding me. So I think what can we gain from each other is, we can, first of all, if we're thinking of going into a formal education program, we can find out, who has been through the programs, what they liked, what they disliked. We can get academic mentorship, things as important as, how you prepare and lay out your CV, how you develop your CV, thinking about if you are in an institution that has a tenure and promotion process, what is it they value, where you want to have a greater emphasis, and making sure that you develop a successful tenure plan. And before I go on, and here's another question I wanted to pose to the group, so maybe, Shauna, we could just wrap up. The earlier question I asked was whether we need to develop a curriculum that's unique to allied health education. I'm seeing on my screen of the 8 people who responded, 6 felt yes and 2 felt no. In terms of those people who are on the call, is there an interest in perhaps having just a group meet at the end of a session, or perhaps one night go out to dinner to look at mentorship? And so I'll throw this out as a second question to the group. So if you wouldn't mind voting yes or no, do you have an interest in meeting as a group? So it wouldn't necessarily need to be everyone, but if you were working, let's say you're newer to academe, or maybe you've been around for a while, but there's another element of your faculty work that you want to develop, would you want us to identify a specific time where the group could get together and talk about your individual goals? Sorry,
Ellen, I accidentally cleared that other poll before I was able to push the results out. Well,
that's fine, because I think I summarized it, so we're good to go.
And so while folks are voting about whether or not they'd like to hang out for a group meeting or a dinner or something, I do have a few comments about a few of the topics you brought up in the last few minutes. When asked about moving the associate program to a bachelor's program, Tom Smalling mentioned that Seattle Central College, which is a community college in Washington, switched from an AS successfully to a BAS last year. So I do believe that the program director up there is Fred Golia. And then another participant, Lanny, mentioned that they've had some discussions with community colleges for the potential of dual enrollment. So there's another option if the community college or state is unwilling to allow the community college to provide a bachelor's degree that dual enrollment might be an interesting thing to consider. The next question that you had asked about was the 60 credit limit. And from my personal knowledge here in Texas, with John Heiser, who's out at Tarrant County College, and a few of the other Texas folks, Texas has enacted a 60 credit limit on associate degrees, which is of course affecting the respiratory care program significantly. And just a few days ago, John emailed to let us know that the Texas Board of Education has approved a waiver for all respiratory therapy programs in the state to at least add another 6 credits, so their limit is 66. So it's not perfect, but it's certainly better than 60, so that's a good thing. I know that just from communications that folks have sent to me over the past year or so that a lot of our states are dealing, I think over 20 states I think are dealing with these associate degree credit limits, so that's of course a very big deal. And then when talking about the graduate programs to prepare faculty to teach in RT programs, Lanny also remarked that the Northeastern program does a great job. And I'm sorry, I'm going to go back one step back to the reducing the hours. A thing to look out for reducing hours is the Department of Public Health rules for drawing ABGs and running ABG labs. When cutting hours, the science courses required to qualify for those labs may be cut, and if the candidate doesn't have the right background for drawing ABGs and running the diagnostics labs, then that affects the Department of Public Health certification of those labs and obviously employability of those people. So that has to be something to consider as well.
Okay, thanks, Shauna, for those updates. Just to summarize what I can see from my screen, it looks like there are a handful of individuals who would be interested in getting together perhaps at Summer Forum or International Congress and having an informal dinner or discussions about mentorship. So we will see what we can do to make that happen for the group. So thank you. If you aren't interested in a formal educational program in terms of degree granting credits, I just want to highlight the AARC Leadership Institute. They have an education program, and the information is here on the slide. So here is another education option for becoming a stronger educator. Tom Smalling helped me out and provided a few updates from COARC to address the next question. And so I'd like to thank you, Tom, for giving us some good information here. And Tom had shared with us in terms of our programs having difficulty meeting enrollment goals. Well, enrollments he reported that they were down 3.8% in 2013, and that was being down overall nationwide, and that's across all types of higher ed programs. And that job placement dropped to 84.6%, which is down less than 1%. So let's go on to the next slide, and again, I want to thank Tom for providing us with a nice slide here that's where you see each little pin with the blue circle. That's identifying the geographical locations where programs were not able to meet their threshold for job placement. So as we take a step back, we can see that that they're kind of geographically clustered together in a few locations. The next theme that was expressed by a section member related to the COARC white paper, and I want and basically the question was asking for the AARC and the Ed section to address calling for a separate accrediting agency. So just to give this a little perspective, I wanted to share that the white paper was released 2 days prior to President Salvatore's address, where he listed his 2015 goals. And recall that one of the goals I listed at the outset of this program from President Salvatore was to encourage development of programs, accreditation, and credentialing of the advanced practice respiratory therapist. So towards this end, the AARC board is already working with our current partners on achieving this goal, and I will be delighted to share information with the AARC membership as it matures. Here's an international student topic. This individual wanted to know how RT programs have handled students who come from another country but completed a respiratory care program in their home country. And so so if you are accepting students from other countries, how do you handle it? If you don't mind typing in your responses. I happen to presently work in a program where we do take students who have completed programs in other countries, and if they come to our program without the RRT credential, we do have them repeat courses so that they are eligible to sit for the NBRC exam and take their board exam here. I would also like to highlight from personal experiences that we need to be sensitive to homeland security issues. So find the individual in your institution that works with international students. In order for them to maintain their visa status, they need to achieve a certain number of credits. We need to look at if they were to drop a course, not get an appropriate course grade, that they need to be full-time. There are rules about how many courses they can take at a distance. So those would be some other suggestions I would make to you to evaluate. I think many people have experience with working with students who have come from other countries where you need to use an evaluation agency to look at their transcript to see how courses taken abroad may transfer here, and then other good education topics as we think about international students is thinking about culture, what was and helping those students understand some of the values of the U.S. culture, as well as language and writing skills. From my work in New York City, and I felt at some weeks that I was working at the UN with many students from varied cultures. These are all some other things that I would encourage you to think about as you work with international students. So if you have suggestions of how you dealt with this in your program, specifically international student admissions, whether you have them, if you waive certain courses, please feel free to chime in, and then I'll check back in with Shauna in a little bit, and she can share whatever information you have shared with us through your chat room message. Someone was inquiring about the number of hours students needed to complete in their clinical practicums each semester, and what that total needed to be for the end of the program. And again, I'd like to thank Tom Smalling for providing this helpful response. The COARC standards are outcome-based. So in other words, the COARC standards do not specify the specific number of hours. What they are concerned about is that you can turn out graduates who are competent. So Tom shared with us that the average number of hours is around 850, and I believe this is for the total number of hours across the program, and that values range between 500 and 1400, and it seems to be when you fall below 600 hours, the program outcomes are weaker. So thank you, Tom Smalling, for sharing that information. Speaking of COARC, site visit preparations. Everybody wants to be prepared when it's time for their site visit. Where might you go for resources? Go to the COARC website. And here I've included two links. The first is an overview of the accreditation process, and it handles at that link not just the actual site visit, but all the paperwork and steps involved in the process. And as well, there is a presentation for preparing for a successful site visit also on the website. If anybody has been through a recent site visit and wants to chime in anything they either learned or found especially helpful, feel free to chime in and share that in the chat box as well. Another topic raised by a section member that applies to both clinical and academic educators was research. And this nicely fits with one of President Salvatore's goals of developing the next generation of researchers. So we have a presentation that's coming up at the Summer Forum. It's not just a single presentation, but it's actually a symposium that addresses writing and research. So it begins with evaluating the evidence, what every student should be taught and every therapist should do. So again, addressing both academic as well as clinical therapists, or entry-level students as well as therapists who are already practicing. Teaching students to write for the profession, as well as looking at how to incorporate research into clinical practice. So that's a program that's going to be offered at the Summer Forum. As far as research goes, if you want to be a truly independent researcher, you really need graduate level preparation to be fully independent unless you have been blessed with many strong mentors along the way. You probably do need a doctoral degree, but certainly in our bachelor's programs we give students exposure to research. In master's level programs they get more exposure. And if anyone is really interested in seriously getting into research, you need to think of how you're going to prepare yourself academically as well as get strong mentorship. And so again, with mentorship, we might find mentorship locally in places where we work, but I would also strongly encourage using our respiratory care colleagues as mentors, and attending our national and international meetings gives us an opportunity to bump into people who might have a similar interest and be able to be helpful to us along the way. If anyone else has other suggestions for mentorship, again, feel free to chime in. The Lambda Beta Society is our respiratory care profession's national honor society. So consider starting a chapter if your education program does not already belong to the Lambda Beta Society. Not only will you be able to recognize your students, but also you're going to be eligible, your students will be eligible for scholarships. There is a scholarship deadline for a number of scholarships that Lambda Beta offers, and that deadline is coming up May 15th. So as a classroom educator, here's a great opportunity when you're giving writing assignments, is to let students know that there are also scholarships available, and perhaps you can motivate a student to do a few more edits and revisions on whatever project they're working on, because they might be eligible, they might be able to get some scholarship money from it. I will share both with the Lambda Beta Society as well as the next scholarship opportunity that is available. It's not my sense that there's an overwhelming number of applicants. So here, these are scholarships which are directed just toward our pool of respiratory therapists, as well as they aren't great numbers. So this really places students in a favorable position to get a scholarship by putting forth some extra effort. The ARCF awards, those are given out annually. This deadline is June 15th, and I want to highlight not just for our entry-level respiratory care students, but there are scholarships for postgraduate, and so in other words, our graduate level students, as well as research grants. So those of you who might be working on graduate degrees, here are some scholarship opportunities for you. The AARC is offering student members a deal if they renew their membership to the AARC in advance of graduation. So those of you working in academic programs, your students who are AARC student members should have gotten emails 3 to 6 months in advance of graduation for only $70 for a 2-year period, which is $35 per year. If they are able to get registered, or if they're able to renew at the very latest 3 months in advance, they can get a great deal. And keep in mind, they also get that $40 discount on their MBRC clinical simulation exam. If they do miss that 3-month deadline, they still have a second opportunity to renew 2 months before graduation to 1 month after graduation, and still get a reduced fee of $90 for a 2-year time period. Again, giving them yet one more opportunity. Between 2 and 6 months after graduation, they can renew for $70 for 1 year, which is much less of a deal. I was working with our students here, and one of the things we noticed as we were hitting upon the deadline as we just shifted over into March is not all the students received the message, even though they were getting AARC messages. And what happened is it got stuck in their spam filter. So if your students are not getting the message, it's worth it to work with them and figure out if they're stuck in a university or a campus spam filter. We figured out what the issue is, and it also taught me that amongst the things we need to teach our students is how to manage their email, to be aware of where the filters are and how to check them regularly. The next topic I have is to address our Specialty Educator of the Year, and very shortly there's going to be an announcement sent out for someone that you think has been an excellent educator and has contributed well as an educator. Could be in a clinical setting as well as an academic setting. If you have someone in mind, I did put a link up here. You're going to be in your March section newsletter. The link will also be published, but I just got a sneak preview of the link yesterday, so I thought I would throw it in the presentation because I'd love to have some terrific nominations coming in. Sean, I have just a couple more slides, but why don't I pause for the moment, and is there anything you want to share that's come through on the chat side?
No, we haven't had anything come through on chat at this point. I did wonder, though, if maybe some of these topics just need a little bit of thought, and people just want to take a minute to mull over the question before responding. So if we want to, we can also put some of these questions out on the AARC Connect community to maybe spur some discussion there as well.
Okay. Thank you, Shauna. So to get close to the close, at the December meeting in Las Vegas, I had asked if there were education section volunteers who were interested in looking over the resources that were in the Education Swap Shop, which is located in the Education Specialty section area within the AARC website. Another resource that was available there is an Education Resources directory. And so when I took a peek back at what was in the Swap Shop and in the Resources directory, first of all, I had a little. I'm still negotiating the new website, and thank you, Shauna, for helping me locate it. But as I was thinking about updating these resources, it occurred to me, since these electronic resources were created, we've had AARC Connect become available, and AARC Connect has within it a library feature. And so a question I want to pose to the group: do we want to have on the AARC website a resource area of, a swap shop and a directory? And then do we also want to have resources located in the library section of AARC Connect? Or does it make more sense to just have all of our resources in Connect and just have it in one location? So the question I'm posing is, as section members, do you want to maintain the Swap Shop and Resources directory on the AARC website? So go ahead and log in your votes. So yes for keeping a separate section on the AARC website, and no, if you would just want all the resources to be pooled in one area, the library section of AARC Connect. Okay, it looks like we have a couple votes coming in. I'm just going to wait another moment more as I'm seeing, got a handful of voters, and we have, I think, a number of people who might not matter. Okay, so as I'm looking at it, our vote looks pretty split. And so with that in mind, it looks like there is an interest in keeping resources in two sections. If any of you are interested in updating and reviewing the resources, your assistance would be greatly appreciated. So let me know if you have an interest in organizing and updating these resources. A couple upcoming educational events. We have the Open Forum Abstract deadline. So this is the open forum where individuals can present their research posters at the at our International Congress, and that'll be coming up in Florida this November. The deadline for that being May 1st, and you can use the hyperlink, go to the AARC homepage and look for the request for proposals. As I mentioned throughout the program, we have a number of great sessions addressing topics that were of concern to you, and that summer forum will be held July 12th through the 15th, and then we will go to another warm location in November, which feels like a good idea on a cold Chicago day here, and I know that a number of other people across the U.S. are also enjoying or navigating some cooler weather, so it'll be good to think of going to a warm location for our upcoming meetings. Those were the topics that I had, and so I'm just going to open the floor again to the group to see if anyone else had any concerns they wanted to express.
Ellen, I just wanted to throw something out there that had been requested. I know that not everybody can go to Summer Forum. Unfortunately, it'd be awesome if we could get everybody, all of our educators, to Summer Forum. That would be fantastic. But, you know, it's not always possible. So one of the recommendations was to have the education section meeting that is at Summer Forum, have it streamed live. And if the group is interested in that, I can look into potential ways to have that done.
I really like that idea because our goal is in the section is to be inclusive, and if it doesn't work for whatever reason, at least to have a recording or an opportunity again through the chat, so that we can make sure that we get everybody's ideas. So thanks for that suggestion.
And then I will also let you know that the education and the respiratory care education annual call for papers expired on Monday, and we have several options or several submissions that we'll be getting to the reviewers later today, so very excited about that. And that will be published in very early September.
And
then,
excuse me for interrupting, Shauna, but I would just like to add on to that. And there's no time like the present to think about getting things prepared for next year, because it does take a while to get a research project mature and then get your data collected, analyzed, and written. So now's a great time to be thinking about your submission for next year.
That's a great point. The submissions are requested every February, typically mid-February to late February submission deadline, so you can kind of bank on that year-round. And then we do have a question that from someone who was unable to join us early on. What is the vision for the, is there a bridge for RRT AS to BS programs, and is there support for having academic academic credit for NVRC specialty credentials?
Okay, so why don't I go back, actually, how about if I literally go back? Let's get this on the screen. So we addressed earlier that the AARC has plans to develop a toolkit to help associate degree programs make that transition to baccalaureate programs. And then we also put out a call for those individuals, and I think you cited at least one person on the call today said that they, or you made reference, perhaps Tom Smalling had suggested a program that had recently made the transition from associate to baccalaureate degree. And I'm not sure if that's addressing the question adequately, so you can give me some feedback.
I think so. I think the other component was the AS to BS programs for those persons already holding an RRT.
Okay, so someone who would be wanting to complete a bachelor's degree, a working therapist?
Correct.
Right, and that's something we definitely need to address, and it is included in one of the goals of President Salvatore to develop our current respiratory care workforce. In terms of, do I have something to share at the moment of exactly what's out there? We are not prepared at the moment, but it's something that I will definitely bring forward to the AARC board.
Thanks, Ellen. I know that there were some board members working on sample articulation agreements, so I can follow up with that. But if, Vicki, if you wanted to put a shout out on AARC Connect, I know that there are several programs out there that take the RRT with an associate's degree and help them complete their bachelor's degree, and they may have some articulation agreements to share if you wanted to put the call out there. And then the second part, Ellen, was, is there support for having academic credit for NVRC specialty credentials?
I'm aware of some programs that do recognize an NVRC credential as being equivalent to a certain number of credits toward a baccalaureate degree. So this would be someone who is a working therapist, and so instead of looking at every single course that individual took, they'll say, well, to give you credit for your respiratory care knowledge, we'll acknowledge X number of credits for that NVRC credential, and that would be done on an individual institution's, whatever they decide. So that's not. But again, perhaps where I hear the question coming from is, could we share some of these models with each other as more programs are built? Does anyone else want to chime in and share information on this topic?
It looks like, Ellen, that there are several people who are actively typing right now, so I'll fill up some space while they finish up typing their messages. Your explanation was where I was going with that too, is that it would be more along the lines of what the academic institution would accept, depending on the academic institution's rules on curriculum, proofing, competencies, right, that kind of thing, and less of a blanket statement. And Tom Smalling just posted that from the COARC's perspective, credit for prior learning or experience is an institutional prerogative. So the COARC doesn't make a statement one way or the other. It's up to the institution to figure that out.
Great, thanks for sharing. Any other questions before we wrap up?
Yes, and Lanny posted that they do give academic credit for having completed the RRT. They give 12 hours. Lanny, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that's for the AS to BS completion program. Is that correct? It is, yes. So for their their
great.
degree, I call it degree completion, but I think the actual term is degree advancement program. They do give 12 hours for earning the RRT for actual credit. And I see a couple more people typing, so we'll give them a minute.
While they're typing, let me share something that was that I had not thought about when I was new to the academic setting. Is, I thought about, I took some courses in a variety of places. I could just add up all my course credits together, go to a educational institution and say, here's my package, can you give me a degree? So for those of you who are not working in academic settings, one thing to keep in mind is each institution list a certain number of credits you must earn in residence at their facility in order to grant a degree. So sometimes people are a little frustrated because they thought I could just bring my whole package, take one course or two, and I could walk away with a diploma with your university seal on it. So it's just a good word to share with some of our working clinicians who might have a smattering of courses from a variety of locations. They need to complete what's considered courses in residence at a given institution. So they shouldn't be surprised if there are a minimum of like 30 credits that they need to complete in order to be granted a degree from that institution. Any other comments to wrap up, Shauna?
Vicki clarified a little bit and asked about the ACCS, NPS, AEC specialty credentials. Lanny responded that they actually use the ACCS self-assessment exam or matrix to redevelop a course to better prepare the graduates for the exam, and they're looking at doing that with the NPS as well. I will mention that when I was at the University of Missouri, and I left 2 years ago, so I can't speak to what they're doing right now, but if I had a person come to me for the degree advancement program, if they had the ACCS, NPS, well, they didn't have ACCS because it was before the credential was launched, but if they had the NPS or the AEC, whatever course that material corresponded to, we just waived the course. We didn't give them credit. They were just able to waive that course and take a different course to meet residency that would be more relevant to their personal situation, more interesting, more applicable, whatever. So, but again, it's been 2.5 years now since I've left Missouri, so I don't know if they continue that practice or not. And then to wrap us up, Bill Galvin gave us a little shout out here. Some points of clarification. Developing Clinical Simulation Workshop will be Sunday morning at Summer Forum. Preceptor Training Lecture will be Tuesday at Summer Forum. And a lecture on articulation agreements will be held on Tuesday morning at Summer Forum. I know that the final program has not been posted online. I do know that the goal of posting that is this month, and I know that the registration has already opened in the store. So if anybody's interested in jumping on that early bird rate, I know that registration's open. So again, by the end of the month, we should see the full program posted on the AERC website.
Thanks, Shauna, and I'd like to give a personal thank you to Bill Galvin. This was my opportunity, my first opportunity to look at the wonderful proposals that everybody submitted, and I'd like to thank Bill for his great advocacy as we went through the proposals. We looked at issues that others were addressing, and Bill represented us very well and advocating for presentations to address the topics that were of big concern to the section. So thank you, Bill, for the time that you put into it and for advocating to get themes directed toward concerns that the section membership had. Okay, well, if there are no further questions, I think we are like right on the button here for timing. So again, thanks to all for sharing your concerns. To form the content for the meeting. Hope the information was helpful, and we can follow up some of these themes in discussions on the AARC Connect. So take care, everybody, and stay warm for those of you who are having polar weather, and look forward to seeing everybody next time or chatting with you the next time we can connect in a webinar. Take care.